order. And thank you for starting that. And we'll start with a call to order and a review of the teleconference rules.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. This is Brian Yates with Schwartz, Page and Harding, and I'm happy to go through our remote meeting procedures one last time before we get to start meeting in person next month. So as in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through those procedures and then we'll perform a roll call. So to begin with, I need to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, include the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we will continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely this evening so that we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with the roll call for our board of directors, Anthony Cardell.
Present.
Paul Brown.
Present.
Laura Norton.
Here.
Jennifer Ronk.
Here.
Cynthia Ullman.
I'm present.
Okay, that completes the roll call for our directors. We do have a full quorum present. We'll move on now to the roll call for Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson.
Present.
Mike Mooney.
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois.
I'm here.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Jeannie Scott.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water in the meeting? Now we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelling.
Present.
Ed Shackelford.
Present.
Chris Meeks.
Present.
And any other representatives from the River Authority in the meeting?
Wayne Owen.
Anyone else from the River Authority?
No, sir.
Okay, we will move on to MUD 47 consultants. Do we have any MUD 47 consultants in the meeting? If there are none, we will move to the roll call for members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? We need to identify you for the record as well.
This is Mark Unlin.
Arthur Bredehoff.
Mark Vonderow, MUD 46, Director.
Okay, this is Brian. Do we have any other members of the public present in the meeting? Maureen, does that appear to cover everyone who's in the meeting?
Yes, that's everyone.
Okay, that'll complete the roll call. I'll hand it over to Anthony to begin the agenda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll move to number 2, receive comments from the public.
Anthony, before we start, I'm trying to understand. I read the entire, I read our documentation today. And when I got to the end of it, there was a revise in the packet hidden for me anyway, on a paper basis, was something titled revised agenda with no date on it. Okay. And I'm trying to understand whoever revised it. Could you tell me where it was revised specifically?
Paul, we added the MCAT item, which is item number, it should be.
I'm sorry?
Number 9.
So number 9 has been replaced.
Hadn't been replaced, it's just added to the agenda. It's an MCAT item, MCAT item to nominate Arthur Breedhoff.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is
got it.
Brian.
And then
Paul,
that's the
that
only
came in-
change?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, did you have something to add?
This is Brian. I was just going to give Paul a little background that the resolution came in after the packets had already been prepared, and we didn't want to go through all the meetings and take action without it being on the agenda, since they were due to the appraisal district before our next round of meetings, and then have to ratify the next go around. So we still had some time to be able to post revised agendas, and so that's the route we went, and just had a revised agenda with that item added.
Yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that when we started this, I'd have everything in order and I could follow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I would have skipped over it. I was working off the packet. So number 2 in both packets, receive comments from the public. So if anyone would like to, from the public would like to speak, now is your opportunity.
This is Mark Unlin.
Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Even though I personally would benefit from MUD 67's proposed drainage improvement project, I urge you to not approve funding for this project until further definition is provided, sufficient engineering study has been performed, and cost-sharing plan is appropriate. Here's some details of that. Since this came up at the last meeting, I've been trying to get further definition on the preliminary engineering work and the cost-sharing details. I have received some information. For example, I did get the submittal to the Texas Water Development Board and the cost-sharing map, but not what I would consider the full details that you would have when you're committing to a project or funding a project. The project cost estimate right now is $14 million, but that includes only 10% contingency, even though detailed engineering, environmental studies, and permitting has not been done. So since contingency is meant to account for typical cost growth as project definition improves, I would have thought we would have a higher contingency, maybe 50% or more, unless we've had a long history of similar projects that have not had cost growth from this point. So I believe the cost of $14 million is understated relative to the amount of definition we have right now. As presented, this project would cost about $40,000 per protected house, but there does not appear to be any alternative cases. For example, how can we protect more houses, or how many homes could be protected with less cost? There are many homes in MUD 60, for example, that are not protected, but it's not clear why those were excluded. We're just presented with one case, and you don't have the option to pick among other options. There should be more detailed engineering study and alternatives before we commit to funds. Another point is the proposed cost distribution is based on the number of lots protected. So that ignores the benefits to other entities. For example, SJRA, the Woodlands Township, Howard Hughes, the school district, churches, and others, who also benefit but are not part of the proposed distribution and so not part of the funding sources. In addition, the lot calculation includes lots in MUD 47 that will not benefit, but excludes lots in MUD 67 and 7 that will benefit. So this artificially raises the proportional cost to our residents in MUD 47. There should be more discussion on cost distribution options before we commit to funds. You're being asked to commit several $1 million on behalf of your residents without being able to do due diligence to know if it's a good investment. Compare that approach to the wastewater treatment plant 1 odor issue, where modeling is being done and shared, detailed engineering studies are being performed, alternatives are being considered, and detailed design is being done before the funding commitment. That project is only $2 million, so you would expect even more analysis for a project 7 times larger, but instead we get less. So even though I personally would benefit from this project, I urge you not to approve funding until further definition is provided, sufficient engineering study has been performed, and that cost sharing is appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak today?
President Cardell, this is Arthur Bredoff, if I may, sir.
Please go ahead, Arthur.
Thanks very much. As a resident of Mud 47, I support the Bear Branch, Panther Branch drainage project. The application was approved by the Texas Water Board. Our executive director, Jim Stenson, presented the cost sharing proposal in last month's meeting to the various MUDs. And as we all know, MUD 67, MUD 7, MUD 60, MUD 46, and MUD 47 have been asked to share in this project. This is the same MUDs that also share in ownership of the dam and will be later this year looking at cost estimates to repair the dam. We also have Metro MUD that has stepped up and committed $1 million. I would ask MUD 47 tonight to approve the funding as presented by Jim Stenson and his staff for this project. There is definitely a benefit not only to MUD 47, but to the other MUDs that I've indicated, and in particular the homes that continue to flood that's near the drainage ditch for Bear Branch and Panther Branch. Thank you for your time and appreciate your support.
Thank you, Arthur. Is there anyone else?
Mark Vonderow, Mud 46 Director. Hello to all the new faces that I've never met before on a fellow mud district in the Woodlands. And I'm here to listen about the drainage project, and my board meeting will be tomorrow night. So I'm just gathering facts. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I think that's our only 3 members of the public today. So we'll move on to number 3. Consider and act on requests for adjustments to or relief from the specific charges posed by the district.
Hi, this is Jeannie, and I don't have any.
Okay, thank you, Jeannie.
And Anthony, this is Mike. I have no adjustments for MUD 47 this month either.
All right, thank you, Mike. Next is our consent agenda 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on minutes of the June board meeting. Review and act financial reports for June 2021. Quarterly investment reports for April through June 21st. And receive the tax collector's report and consider an act on improving attendance and expenses for trustee businesses. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda, or does someone need to move a special item out?
I don't have an objection to it, so I would like to make a motion to pass the consent agenda, but I would like to, just for clarification or a question, since this has our financial reports in this consent agenda. My question is about the balance sheet of the agency that has the office building on it for a little over $1 million. And I'm wondering if Maureen could speak to why is it on the books for $1 million instead of the $550,000 that the developer is entitled to buy it via first right of refusal?
I would have to look into that amount and how it came to be. It could be construction costs, engineering, everything else, but I'm not sure about that. So,
Okay, very good. Well, then I'd like to move that we pass the consent agenda.
This is Paul. I'll second it.
Okay, great. So here's a motion and a second. We'll put it to a vote. All those, well, I guess I can't say all. Paul, how do you vote?
In favor.
Laura?
I'm in favor.
Jennifer?
Aye.
And Cynthia?
Aye.
Right. Aye. Motion carries. And we'll move on to number 9. Receive the San Jacinto River Authority Woodlands Division report.
I think that's old 9, Anthony. I think we need
Yeah,
new 9.
that's
Thank
There
you.
you go, Anthony.
All right. Number 9, adopt resolution casting votes for the MCAD special district candidate to be placed on a countywide ballot for the board of directors of the Montgomery Central Appraisal District.
If you recall last month, your MUD, and I think all of our MUDs unanimously supported Arthur Bredehoff for this position for a special purpose district candidate. So tonight is your opportunity to cast your votes via resolution for Arthur.
I'll make a motion that we cast our votes in favor of Arthur Bredehoff for the MCAD board.
I'll second it. Jennifer.
Great. So a motion and a second. Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Good luck to you, Arthur. And we'll move on to item 10, receive the San Jacinto River Authority / Woodland Division report.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is Chris Meeks. I do not have anything to cover on the monthly operations report, but I do know that Mr. Brett Rayleigh, who has joined us with the River Authority, he does have a presentation to go through. I'll turn it over to Brett.
Good evening, everyone. I apologize. I'm late to the game today. Had something else going on, but I'm going to go ahead and present my screen if I can here. So what I wanted to do this evening is to just go over for you the Bear Branch Division 10-year project plan and just highlight a few things with regard to FY 2022's operations and maintenance budget. Just as a reminder, SJRA is responsible for managing, operating, and maintaining the Bear Branch Reservoir System, which includes the reservoir, the dam, and about 4.5 miles of flowage way through certain sections of the woodlands. One of the things that I wanted to highlight, there are 2 projects in our 10-year project plan that are potentially significant cost expenditures that we're going to need to address. And so one of them is repairs to the soil cement, which is this deteriorated material that you see here. This is on the upstream face of the dam. The concrete portion of the dam, if you can see my cursor, begins right here. So the area in the dashed yellow lines is the area of the soil cement. And then beyond that, that's just standard concrete. Back a few years ago, I think it was 2014, we had an engineering study done on the soil cement to sort of address its current condition, life expectancy remaining, things of that sort. At the time, we were advised that we should be thinking to the future, knowing that this would have to be replaced eventually. And then this past year, we had a state required inspection of the dam. And the firm that did the inspection came back and likewise mentioned this deteriorating soil cement. And their recommendation was that we repair it within the next 3 to 5 years. So that's why you'll see it appear in our project plan where it does. So this is one of 2 major projects that I wanted to inform you about. The other is called the Bear Branch Spillway Void Investigation. During routine maintenance at the Bear Branch Dam, our maintenance personnel, we had been keeping an eye on a small crack that you see highlighted in the red circle for some time, but then almost, not suddenly, but between monthly visits or monthly inspections, it was significantly more, what had opened up significantly more. Of course, we got on the phone with our dam safety consulting engineer and explained the situation, sent pictures, etc. There was a rain event approaching, so we went ahead on the advice of the engineer, filled this temporarily with a flowable fill that was just a stopgap until we could do further. We could look at things further and closer, more detail. When we did that, when we filled this void with flowable fill, we began to see it exude through cracks in other places along the plunge pool. And you can see the plunge pool labeled on the picture on the bottom left. It's where the energy dissipation blocks are, just downstream in and of the primary spillway, the service spillway. So that gave us cause for concern. Upon the advice of the engineer who subsequently came out and did field investigation, we engaged a contractor to do ground penetrating radar study of as much of the spillway as they could physically do. And the results from that survey came back, and they were suspect in a few ways. And one way was that pretty much everything that you see yellow, highlighted in yellow on the bottom left screen, was identified as areas of potential voids beneath the concrete. And so that in itself was just, it's a hard pill to swallow, frankly, to think that there were voids over just about the whole surface area of the emergency spillway. Some of the other things were the size of some of the voids that the survey suggested were deep enough and long enough and wide enough that the specifications of the concrete on the spillway would not support that. If they were as big as they were projected to be, then the concrete would have settled, would have cracked, it would have settled. And so those two things, just the sheer surface area of what they were suggesting they could be, as well as the size that they were suggesting they could be, just didn't settle right. So once again, our dam safety engineer looked at the results for us, gave us an opinion, and gave us a path forward for next fiscal year. And that path forward is what we've budgeted for next year is $250,000. $100,000 of that is earmarked for additional, what they call destructive and non-destructive testing. So they'll do additional subsurface look at the soil beneath the concrete, and they'll drill through the concrete with some cores and look inside with a camera and analyze the soil beneath the slab for various properties. And so $100,000 is earmarked for the investigative work and the engineering work, and another $150,000 is earmarked for a potential design to make repairs to make repairs to the voids that are beneath the concrete. So those two projects, the soil cement and the void project, are listed in this 10-year projection of the projects that we have on the books as we sit. And the yellow highlighted area are those two projects that I'm referring to. We've already been given an opinion of probable construction cost on the soil cement repairs. So that's why you see those numbers populated in FY24 and 25. For the void repairs, we've gone ahead and highlighted a 3-year period for which
Hey,
we could
Brett?
anticipate. Yes.
Sorry, can we go back? Is it divided up between the 75 and the 925 because it's design and implementation, or why is there the split there that you're showing?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, it absolutely is. So the 75 is on the design side, the 925 is on construction and those engineering services that typically accompany construction phase services, etc.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So as far as the void repair, as I said, we've allocated $250,000 to effectively get a better grasp on the extent of what we've got at the spillway. And then of course, we won't know about engineering and/or construction costs until we get the results of that. But because these two projects, well, let me back up. The rest of the 10-year projection are some of your typical items that we have continuously in our project plans. Every 5 years, we're required by the state of Texas to do an engineering inspection of the dam. So you see those earmarked in 26 and 31. And we, as a matter of course, every 5 years, take a look at our emergency action plan. And so you see those earmarked in 24 and 29. But I just wanted to mention that those funds would only be expended if it were necessary to make significant updates to our emergency action plan. And typically, the things that would trigger that would be if we were required to do a new breach analysis on the dam and or new inundation mapping for breach scenarios downstream of the dam. And so if we get to those years and those things aren't required, then we will not need to spend the funds that we have earmarked here. The other thing that really is the point that we wanted to get across today is that unlike recent years where the funding has been primarily just for operations and maintenance expenses, because of these fairly high dollar items that are looming out there, we're suggesting that all of the 5 MUDs that contribute to paying the expense of operating and maintaining the Bear Branch system begin setting reserves aside, or escrow funds, or whatever the proper term would be, but start pre-saving for these eventual expenses. And so we've just made a recommendation of $500,000 next fiscal year, and then you can see the recommendations for subsequent fiscal years through FY25. And so the chart below that just has the 5 contributing MUDs, and based on the percentages that each currently pays to support the operation and maintenance of the dam, reservoir, and system, we've allocated those same percentages to each of those years, as you see here. Then subsequent to that, the typical expenditure for any given year, as I said, is our operations and maintenance budget. So this is a snapshot of next fiscal year's operations and maintenance budget. It's significantly higher than the budget was in 21, and that being primarily for that $250,000 that we spoke about a few moments ago. Of course, the reserve payments are not reflected in this, or escrow payments, as you would say. One thing to point out here is that the total expenditures for the budget is the $568,187. We're projected to have a balance left in the fund of $84,298 that will carry over, hence the net of $483,769. So that's what's being reflected here in the operations and maintenance budget for next year. And then if I switch to this slide is to show, okay, in terms of just standard operation and maintenance for next year, what will the participating MUD's contribution be? And of course, as you can see, they're listed here. And then the bottom is to show if each MUD were to do its own reserve, its own escrow outside of SJRA, that payment, or those funds, including the operations and maintenance funds, the total commitment would be what's shown on the right there between the reserve payments and the O&M expenses. And so that's just for next fiscal year. And so that's really all I had for you. I'd be willing to try to answer any questions or to go back to any of the previous slides if you have questions on any of them.
Brett, this is Paul Brown.
Yes.
I really haven't heard anybody speak to risks yet. What are the risks we have out there? Forgetting about the money, okay, money is money, but what are the risks contained in the various analyses you guys have done yourselves and have had others do, other experts do, and it sounds like you were skeptical about the testing that you had done by an outside firm. So I'm trying to understand, before we talk about the money, what are the risks to the community? What are the risks to the physical facility, et cetera?
Well, thanks for the question. On one hand, I would just point out that the Bear Branch Dam is deemed a high hazard dam by TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, who oversees dam safety in the state of Texas. And by high hazard, it involves the potential for loss of life and property damage in the event of a failure. And
Okay.
so the Bear Branch being a high hazard dam, it simply means it's significant. So that right there obviously makes maintenance and structural integrity of the most importance. Fortunately, at this point in time, our dam safety engineer, consulting engineer, has stated that he does not think that we have an immediate imminent dam safety issue, which is great, obviously.
Okay.
If the subsequent testing showed that the scope of the voids were anywhere near what the first survey did, I'd need to get a new opinion from the engineer. But at this current time, they don't think that they have stated that it is not a particular dam safety concern. But what we learn next.
Brett, just if I could interrupt there for a sec. So
Yes, sir.
your employee, okay, our employee, San Jacinto Rivers Authority's employee, that's their opinion, correct?
Yes, sir. That's the opinion on the fact that the current voids are not an immediate dam safety issue is from our consulting engineer, Friesen Nichols.
Okay, and have we thought about getting a second opinion, an independent external opinion on that? Is that necessary, or you guys think that, that's unnecessary?
It's something that we certainly can do at any time, and it's never a bad idea, really. The fact that Freeze was interpreting another GPR study, and that they have subsequently said that they really recommend that we go and engage a consultant to completely manage a full, thorough investigation on it, and then evaluate that. I think I know they're confident that there's no immediacy to it, that we can take the time that if there was, we'd be doing the investigation right now. We would have already started, but they're comfortable that, as long as we're diligent and we address it early next fiscal year, that will be okay. But we could absolutely get a second opinion if we needed to, or if it was deemed, the thing that was recommended to do. I don't know if any of my colleagues on the phone want to add to that or not. But so that, right now the plan is, and the direction that we have is not an immediate danger, need to investigate it further. There is a possibility that we need to expedite it more than we currently think. And if we do, we'll have to come back and address it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And
I
so
guess
going
I'll
back
just throw in that, in my experience with GPR, there can be a lot of interference. So I can understand why there's still questions that are out there. So I'm glad that you're looking at doing some destructive testing and putting in some cores so that we can really understand what's happening and what sense of urgency we need to have to go with that.
Yeah, we're very much looking forward to that as well. The coring is going to, and the camera work inside the coring is going to be instrumental in helping us learn what's happening.
Yep, I agree.
So the point being simply that, unlike previous years, there's some potential large ticket items that are looming, and we just wanted to give every MUD a heads up, a forewarning, make some suggestions on setting some funds aside. And then the bottom of this chart right here just says, okay, between your own reserve contributions that you would do and the contributions to next fiscal year's operating and maintenance budget, that would be the combined commitment based on the percentages for each of the MUDs. So that's what that is showing. So I don't know, you had a couple of questions. Is there anything else I can try to answer, or my colleagues can help me answer?
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Looking at the pictures of the dam, I see a lot of squares. I imagine those are spots where we've covered over graffiti, or are those something, see those like the lighter colored squares there?
Yes, I do. And In most cases, it's exactly what you stated.
Okay.
There would be a few cases where perhaps we've done a small spall repair in the concrete, or perhaps we've re-caulked a joint that you might see lighter colors. But the vast majority of these big spots are exactly what you just said.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Well, just know that we've got studies and memorandums to back up everything that I've said, and are more than willing to share that information if anyone cares to see it. And our current plan is just in September to move forward with getting a consultant on board to do this turnkey investigation and provide recommendations going forward.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
So Chris, that wasn't, that's not our, that's just a little piece of the budget, right? So item number 11, consider an act on budget for SGRA Woodlands Division.
Yeah, so this is Chris Meeks. What Brett was talking about will actually be something that Jim will put in each of the MUD budgets that deal with the Bear Branch. I believe there's 5 MUDs that directly deal with Bear Branch now, the contracts for the Bear Branch. So what Brett talked about has nothing to do with the Woodlands Division budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I did have some questions about something that I've asked about before. The first is, where are we in terms of the financial deficit that's been created around the, the GRP division by the non-payment of certain participants and all the legal expenses? Where are we in terms of that number? I thought we were going to start to report that, but I don't see it anywhere.
This is Chris Meeks. And Ron, I know you looked at those numbers earlier. You may be able to assist me. I did drop the ball on that, Paul. I cleaned.
That's okay.
Did ask that. So I'll make sure that information, excuse me, gets to Jim, and then he can send it out.
No, that's terrific. Then we don't have to dwell on it.
Okay.
Right. I mean, when you have a minute this month that you could get it for next month, that'd be great.
Definitely.
The second thing I was trying to understand that I've asked about in the past has to do with the plant utilization. The actual what's the utilization rate for that facility gapped against what the planned utilization rate was when we spent approximately $500 million to build it?
So the plant is actually designed for 30 million gallons a day. The current production out of the plant, budget-wise, is about 12 million gallons a day.
Right.
So you're less than 50%, probably closer to 40% utilization.
Okay.
When the plant was designed, it was originally planned to produce 65% groundwater, 65% surface water for all the GRP participants. So
who received surface water?
Who received surface water? Correct. Yeah, that's
okay. And so I guess what I'm wondering about is how much of, well, and you probably don't have the number, but how much of that is the result of participants in the agreement not utilizing the committed, their commitment pull of water from the surface water plant? Do we know that, or have we studied that recently?
So the GRP review committee, are the ones who set what the rate's going to be leaving the plant through the budget. And so over the years, there's been a request, I guess you want to say, to reduce the rate and not increase the rate so much due to potential non-payments, the legal fees, as well as the production. That's why the production of the plant has been reduced.
Yeah, if I could add, Chris, Paul, it's not that we're producing only 12 because some people aren't accepting the surface water. It's like Chris said, there's been a drive to cut down on the rate. One way we can cut down on the rate is reduce the production so we can cut down on power costs and chemical costs and all that. So that's why we're driven down to 12 MGD, not because people don't want to take the water.
So to lower cost, we've made a decision not to utilize the capacity of a major facility in the community that voted for spending $500 million.
Yes.
And that push has really been on the part of the Woodlands as well as other participants, I presume.
You mean the push for the rate?
Yeah, the push for the lower utilization.
It's across the board.
Right. And there's, I presume there's no penalty in the contract around that references utilization or utilization impacts, drivers, if you will.
The contracts are not like a take or pay, so it does not state a minimum to be taken by any participant, if that's the question.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And so I'll just add on this item regarding the Woodlands budget, this is the item. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any additional ones. But we do ask that you give direction to your trustee on how to vote on the budget at the August trustees meeting.
Okay. The only other thing I had was on page 27, which was there was a water main break. I don't know where Ashland Way is. Is that our mud or was that somebody else's mud?
This is by the YMCA off of Woodlands Parkway. I should be more familiar with the muds, but I've always got to look at a map.
Okay.
I don't know, Jim, if you can help me.
It's outside the boundary of mud 47, probably in the mud 46 area.
How much did that break cost? Even if it isn't us, how much was it?
19,000, just under.
19,000. Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the budget because it looks like we're budgeting at a 35-65% split.
65% groundwater, 35% surface. Yes, sir.
Right. But I thought we had been discussing increasing the amount of surface water in an attempt to reduce subsidence.
That has been an ongoing discussion. That the cost for that, though, is an additional charge outside the Woodlands Division budget. So if that it does occur, it would be potentially later on as an additional fee.
So you're saying that this would be a different, separate budget? Is what you're telling me? It's just the Woodlands Division budget?
It would be on the surface water conversion fee, the portion of the bill to our customer. If we modify that ratio, that surface water conversion fee would go up to the customer, but it wouldn't be necessarily an impact on the Woodlands Division wholesale budget.
Okay. So that would be a pass through and it wouldn't really affect your budget at all.
Minimally.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Not hearing any other, we'll move on to item number 12. Receive and act.
You need to vote.
Oh, well,
What are we voting on?
Your trustee needs direction on how to vote at the August board trustee meeting.
Okay.
I was thinking you guys were for it.
I guess we should make that clear.
Make a motion that we approve the budget.
All right, I hear the motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second. This is Cynthia.
Thank you, Cynthia. So I have a motion and a second. Paul, how do you vote?
I abstain.
Okay, Laura?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Cynthia?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So that motion will carry, and we'll move on to item number 12. Receive and act on information for retaining the Trinity River Authority water supply agreement.
Good evening, directors. This is Ed Shackelford with St. John River Authority. I'm going to share my screen and offer you a PowerPoint presentation that you've seen once before. Okay, you should have a slide up that says Trinity River Water Supply Option for Montgomery County.
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect. So as I mentioned, we've talked about this back in May. And most recently, we talked to the trustees last week, and their recommendation was to bring this back around to each of the MUDs and refresh memories. So we'll get started. Slide number 2, as soon as it comes up, talks about the issue, and you all know the issue. The issue is Montgomery County is growing, population is increasing, and ultimately there will be a need for additional water supplies to meet the demand for water usage. Like Region H, there are a number of strategies available to help manage this water need. You know, one MUD talked about significant water conservation. We have tonight and have had for a little while this 50,000 acre foot per year Trinity River Authority water supply option to talk further about. And so you've seen this slide once before. It's from Region H Planning Group, and they do the long range planning for water supply needs in Montgomery County and within Region H. And this specifically addresses Montgomery County. If you'll kind of look down to the line that says category municipal, and under 2020, you'll see a number of about 101,000 acre feet of water per year. That is the estimated demand currently. And if you'll, go to the far right under the 2070 column, they're anticipating the water demand for the municipal use of 272,000 acre feet per year. Lake Conroe will yield approximately 100,000 acre feet per year. Somewhere along the line, Lone Star will need to commit to what is allowed out of the aquifer. But if you go on the presumption that 100,000 acre feet is a reasonable number, then along about 2050, Montgomery County will need 200,000 acre feet of water to serve all of the categories within the county. And so after 2050, additional water supplies are going to be needed to meet the demands within Montgomery County. We've talked about where the water would come from. The water is owned. The water right is owned by Trinity River Authority. This option would be for leased water out of the Trinity River or Lake Livingston into the north end of Lake Conroe. It's 50,000 acre feet per year firm yield. And what you see on the slide in front of you is the potential routes to bring the water in. We've got a very preliminary number or conceptual cost of $200 to $300 million to actually build the pump station, build the pipeline and the canals to bring the water into the lake. Now, in the numbers that you will see in just a little bit, the cost for design and construction is not included because the need for that isn't for another 30 years. Currently, I mentioned the water supply option agreement that we have. We're spending $237,500 per year currently. That is built into the GRP rates. Some of the deadlines that are looming because of the water supply option contract by December of this year, TRA says we've got to initiate a service area agreement at an estimated cost of about $250,000. It's mainly lawyers putting contracts together, and there's probably some negotiations along with that. Initiate an interbasin transfer permit. Again, this is more lawyers working with the TCQ. And we also think we may have to go through a couple of legislative sessions to get this finally approved, because you're moving water from one watershed to another. By April of 2028, we've got to convert the service area agreement into a water supply contract. And that initiates an annual reservation fee of approximately $1.5 million. And that is paid out until we actually start taking water, and then we pay the cost of water. So this next slide, and if you'll look at the bottom part of the slide where it says potential increase above SRA GRP rate. From the time period of 2022 to 2027, this would be an approximate cost of 10 cents per household per month for this reservation period. And then beginning in 2028, it would be an additional 20 to 25 cents per household per month for the reservation, being able to reserve that water in SJRA's name. And this is paid by all of the GRP participants. So all 80 customers, and that represents about 140 different water systems paying for this cost. It also includes our industrial raw water customers paying towards this expense. So what we're asking from you all is we need to advise our board no later than our September board meeting what the desire of the Woodlands community is in retaining or dropping the water supply agreement. We have asked, when we presented this back in May, the general consensus by the trustees and the MUDs was we need to do long-range water supply planning, and this is a nominal expense to retain the 50,000 acre feet. The MUDs that we have met with so far all have approved it. And so we're asking for your support tonight to advise our board that you are either interested in retaining the water supply option or to drop it. I'm available for questions.
I guess my question is, what happens if we do drop it? What other options do we have, if any, and what are those cost implications to the residents, in 2030 or 2040 if we made that choice today?
Jennifer, that's a good question. Right now, every municipal entity that we're aware of is scrambling for additional water supplies for their long-term future. Houston owns 750,000 acre feet out of Lake Livingston. Trinity River Authority owns the remaining 250,000 acre feet. And so Houston needs more water. They've had contracts with the various water authorities in Harris County, and they've pulled back 80 million gallons a day from some of those contracts. So they're trying to shore up their supplies. If this 50,000 acre feet if we let it go, we're fairly certain that the city would contract for it, and the availability of it would disappear for our use. So then it gets down to more expensive options like heavy water conservation. So there'd be probably more restrictions on water usage for lawn watering and irrigation. We would have to go to some form of desalination or pulling water from deeper aquifers at a greater cost and a greater expense of electricity to pump the water out, to drill the wells and to treat that water, because it's not only dirty and it's hot. So you'd have to treat it, filter it, you'd have to cool it, and then you'd also have to get rid of the byproduct from the treatment process. Those are kind of your options. Maybe I haven't heard of it, but maybe there would be some available supply in the Brazos River, and then it gets even more expensive to pipe it in from the Brazos River. And then it would not be firm yield. Other questions?
I was afraid that was the answer, but I'm glad you described it.
I have
Sorry.
questions about the deadlines, right? So we have deadlines to accept water when we may not need it for another 3, till 2050.
That's correct, Anthony.
So who's imposing these deadlines that we have to take the water? I mean,
These are contractual deadlines. Now, these are contractual deadlines to get the contracts in place. There is no deadline once you start paying the reservation fee to actually build the system and transfer the water, except for what is forecasted in population projections and water demand projections.
So this interbasin transfer permit, we can punt 10 years on that if
No.
possible?
No, that's that's a contractual obligation. And that's, Anthony, I'm not meaning to be flippant, but that's a small cost in the big picture.
Right. Well, I'm just using that as an example because I see it, right? And
right.
Could I offer a clarification, additional? No, it's not
please,
clarification. So TRA owns his water. And so they're looking at, we need to have this 2028 deadline to have a reservation contract in place, because if you're not willing to, we know that the city of Houston will. And so they have, it's a buyer seller thing, right? And so why should they continue to have an option fee to us of only $250,000 a year if they can have a water supply contract where the reservation fee is about $1.5 million? And they know they have a buyer, in Houston that would be willing to do that. So they have to put some kind of limit on when that contract has to be converted.
Okay. And then my last question I have is, I know Dallas had some issues because they had to do something similar, right? Where they went to another lake and they were trying to transfer water from one to the other, but there was a problem with the mussels, right? That were on the boat and growing everywhere. What keeps us from investing in this huge pipeline and then not being able to access our water?
Well, the zebra, I think you're talking about the zebra mussels.
Yes.
The zebra mussels eventually are going to get here because somebody's going to put it on a boat. Somebody's going to have a boat up in wherever, and they're going to put it in Lake Conroe, and we're going to end up with zebra mussels. There are already zebra mussels, I think, in the Trinity. So it's just going to happen. There are ways, though, to treat or to prevent. There's metals that you can use, and there's chemicals you can use to keep the zebra mussels from attaching to pipe and to bar screens and to pumps. But you got to be diligent about it. So
that means that that's already built in, right?
Yes.
If Trinity hasn't, we're transferring it to Lake Conroe. That's going to have to be part of our build.
It'll have to be part of the maintenance cost.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Well, it sounds like it's an option we need to keep, eh? So I'd like to make a motion that we keep this option going.
Okay. Hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
This is Jen. I'll second it.
Okay. So we'll take the vote. Paul,
Aye.
Laura,
Aye.
Jennifer,
Aye.
Cynthia.
Aye.
All right, I vote aye as well. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
We'll, I'm interested to see how that plays out, but water options, in my experience, once you let them go, they're gone forever. So we'll move on to item number 13. Consider and act on appointing a stakeholder subcommittee member to participate in SGRA/engineer and consultant meetings related to wastewater plant consolidation.
In your packet, there's an email, a copy of an email/memo from Ed Shackelford to me, kind of outlining the purpose of this stakeholder group. And I want to emphasize, we understand that it's a fairly significant commitment. And we certainly want every MUD to have the opportunity to participate and be at that table. But you will get, if you can't find somebody that can do it, you will get another chance to get the information either at future MUD meetings or the trustee meetings. But we thought it appropriate to offer this to each of our 10 MUDs.
And I saw that there was an expectation that you'd attend 75% of the meetings. What I didn't see is how many meetings for how long at what frequency. I think that kind of information might help.
Duration of phase 1 is roughly 12 to 15 months. We're anticipating a meeting every 3 to 4 weeks for a couple hours at a time. Average.
So I've looked at your letter and I see, so you've got MUDs, there are 10 of those, one from the chamber. I've heard numbers as much as more than 60% of the Chamber of Commerce membership is outside of the Woodlands. Howard Hughes and then a township representative.
And a Woodlands Water Agency, correct?
Okay. I thought you're talking an employee of the agency there.
Laura, I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from, but that's an employee of the agency.
It would be an employee of the Woodlands Water Agency, an employee of Howard Hughes, probably the chamber president, JJ Holly, and then the township would be an employee.
Okay. I thought, what about the Ironman? What are we looking at the option specifically of consolidating at the location of number 2 right now?
That is one of the options being considered. Another option is a new site somewhere where we can get 30 acres.
They're definitely a part that would be interested in the affluent and that whole conversation, or the Lake Woodlands Homeowners Association.
Well,
were you asking if Lake Woodlands Homeowners Association might?
Yeah.
What we've tried to do is limit the total to 15.
Yeah.
And most of the MUDs have appointed somebody or nominated somebody. And so by the time you get the 10 or 11 MUDs plus the other entities, we're right at 15.
well, Ed, as far as I'm concerned, if you need someone, I'm more than willing to put the time in.
I'll nominate Paul Brown to be our stakeholder on the waste consolidation project.
I will second that because it sounds really interesting, but I also know I don't have the time. Thank you, Paul.
That's all right. It's all about waste.
Thank you, Paul, for volunteering. So hearing a motion in a second. Paul, how do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Cynthia?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Thank you. Motion carries. We'll
Thank you all very much.
move on to the next item. Receive the attorney's report.
Thank you, Anthony. This is Brian. Couple of items I've been mentioning under the attorney's report. One is that the governor did formally announce that he will be rescinding the disaster proclamation that suspended the in-person meeting requirements under the Texas Open Meetings Act, effective as of September the 1st. It shouldn't affect any of our Woodlands MUDs since all of them have agreed to go back to in-person meetings in August, but did want to make you aware that suspension is being lifted for all political subdivisions beginning in September. Also, the legislative summary from the 2021 regular session, is on the Hightail link and available for directors to review. As I mentioned to the trustees last week, ended up being a fairly quiet session from the special purpose district perspective. Had some pretty problematic bills that were introduced, but we were successful in being able to play defense to make sure that those bills did not pass. We'll see what happens in the special session. You know, it looks like it's primarily, if they can ever get a quorum in the House, it looks like it's primarily focused on election-related items. That could have somewhat of an impact on Woodlands districts in terms of the mechanics of voter qualifications or ID and how some of the election mechanics are conducted, but not really much of a significant impact, I don't anticipate, just to the extent that we are subject to the general election laws that are applicable to all political subdivisions. We'll keep an eye on that as the politics play out in the special session. But as far as the general session goes, fairly quiet, thankful for that, and happy to answer any questions if y'all have them under item number 14. And if there are no questions for me, item 15 is going to be a deferral item. This is an item that you saw for the first time last year in connection with Senate Bill 2 that was passed that in the 2019 session that modified the rollback provisions for operation and maintenance tax revenue. As you may recall, we do rely on the engineer to certify as to whether or not the district is a developing or a developed district. We're still waiting to receive that documentation from LJA, so we do ask for the board to go ahead and defer item number 15 until next month. We can defer it this month. We do need it next month as we start to consider tax rates.
Okay. So do I hear I need a motion to approve this, a motion to defer?
This is Brian. No action is necessary. We'll just defer and then pick it up again next month.
Okay. Sounds like that's our only choice. So we'll go ahead and move on then. Thank you, Brian. So number 16, receive update on proposed FM 1488 development project and authorize any action necessary in connection herewith. Are there any updates for that project?
This is Brian. I did get a message from Dan Colkhurst with Howard Hughes that he was not going to be able to make the meeting this evening, but was planning to attend your in-person board meeting next month. So I don't think there's any updates there on the 16th for this evening.
Okay, thank you. So number 17, consider an act on potential funding partnership with Bud 67 on the Bear Branch Panther Branch Research Forest Drive Drainage Improvement Project or concept.
Just to recap, last month we did present to you a funding scenario for a partnership with Mud 67. I have that information available to share on a screen tonight if you need to look at it again. I know I did send some directors additional information. I can't remember who all got that, but we're still requesting that you consider a partnership. Mud 67 is also again, exploring all potential partnerships and potential funding scenarios. They have reached out also to the township to see about a partnership and our participation from the township. I had a meeting with their staff Friday of last week. Roland Johnson will be meeting with Bruce Reeser tomorrow morning for breakfast to discuss it a little further. But again, we still would ask for your support in this as we move forward to try to tie up a funding partnership for MUD 67.
So is this not on the township board agenda for their 22nd meeting?
To my knowledge, it is not.
Okay.
But I think there's potential that it would be on the next agenda.
Okay.
Well, I think Jim, I haven't polled anyone, but I think you have the support of the board. We just want the details, right? Before we.
Yeah.
Well, and the funding scenario that we presented would be, I guess what the worst case scenario, if you will, if the township does not participate. I've also reached out to Montgomery County Precinct 3 one more time to ask them to reconsider.
Jim, I'm a little confused because I had talked to you offline about getting a walkthrough of exactly how this funding would work and our let's call it a participation agreement, et cetera. And that was deferred because the township supposedly came to the table, we're going to throw up $5 million, and that, Risa had made some comments about it. Are we seriously, are you seriously looking for us to commit to something, or, is this, a ball in the air and, we're all wasting our time talking about it?
No, I don't think we're wasting our time. I think it's a serious issue, a serious project that unfortunately we're just on a very short timeline to get the funding in place and get the application finalized for the loan. So we're trying, I guess we're juggling a number of scenarios at one time simply because we have to.
Well, I would, again, I'll come back to where I started when this came up, and that was, I'd just like to understand the participation agreement and what's being proposed here. There's been nothing solid put on the table. And I certainly am, generally have a favorable view of this because it's necessary and it affords assistance to a substantial amount of Woodlands residents as well as to the commercial community in terms of, in terms of the research forest viability in storms, et cetera. But I think that, it would be great if you could set up that meeting. I'd really like to pursue that along with any other board members who'd like to sit in.
And if you look, I've shared my screen. This is the item that we're requesting action on. And then again, if we have other participants that we can bring on board, then that would reduce the participation for MUD 47 and others.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but what I'm more interested in is understanding, okay, so we're talking about taking a participation, let's call it $2.7 million in this project, okay? There's detail behind that, okay? How's it gonna work? What's the mechanics? This is a 30-year finance, 30-year approved bond, as I understand it, with a 0 interest rate. Are we included in the amortization? Will we get an assessment on a regular basis, et cetera, et cetera? How is this going to work for us and for the other MUDs who participate in the funding of this event? Do we lend them money? Do we pay a payment every year? I mean, it would be great to have that kind of detail so we can assess it.
The proposal that table right now would be a cash upfront cash contribution from each of these MUDs in the amount that's on the screen. If we wanted to explore with MUD 67, MUD 47 participating and paying out that's something that we could certainly bring back to MUD 67 for their consideration.
So in no way, shape, or form would we be, if you will, borrowers, co-borrowers in this event?
Not with the scenario that's put on the screen.
Yeah, this is Brian. In no case would 47 be a bond issuer to the Texas Water Development Board. That relationship can only be between 67 and the Water Development Board as part of that loan grant application. We had one sponsor district applicant, and at the time it was a fairly long shot application, and Jim and LJA and the whole team did a great job to shepherd that through, and that, lo and behold, get the thing approved. So 67 was the sponsor and would be the bond issuer. What they have proposed to the MUDs that went through all the meetings last month was for each of the districts listed on the spreadsheet that Jim had to participate by providing funds on a cash basis to 67 that would go into an escrow account. 67 would then issue bonds for a reduced amount, not up to the full limit that they were authorized to issue, and would put those funds into that escrow account, and then the project would be let, and pay estimates would be issued out of that escrow fund, and then there'd be a true up at the end of the construction process.
Okay, so that's the short term. That would be the short term funding. So we wouldn't be asked to put up the 2.7 day one. We would be asked to put it up periodically through the
This is Brian.
build-out?
No, it would be those funds would be put into the escrow account up front, and we would work on what that actual date was. It would probably be tied to the issue date of 67's bonds. It would not be in this fiscal year. It would be in your next fiscal year. And I think for 47, we had looked and determined that you could certainly use proceeds from your bond issue last year that were earmarked, so to speak, for rehab projects, drainage rehab projects, that we could clearly use those funds. And then possibly the remainder would either come from your operating reserve or using some of your 1488 money. We would go back to the TCEQ and do a change in use application for some of that 1488 bond money. It's certainly not advisable to leave those bond proceeds sitting in that account for too long, because you do end up having arbitrage and yield restriction issues associated with those funds over time. But then if you did that, then to whatever extent you have a reimbursement agreement with the development company for public infrastructure on the 1488 track, you would have to come up with an alternative arrangement for payment of for those facilities, either through operations or installment payments or whatever with the development company. But that's how 47 would do it.
Right, Brian. I think this is a great and timely discussion, because we just kind of touched on how our hands are tied as far as what we can do with our M&O rates, right? But we can't increase them as much as we like. So when we finance this out of cash, and I understand MUD 47, we've got this money in our capital projects fund, we've already issued some debt. But these other MUDs, if they're putting up cash for it, they can't make up the reserve as quickly, right? Because the hands are tied. So that's the idea of issuing debt for, because your INS rate can be adjusted based on your debt requirements. just to put that out
Correct,
there,
but
like, that's the
67 is
conflict.
also a little bit, they're limited in their remaining bond authorization. We're getting to the back end of all these MUDs, as you know, Anthony, and a lot of them are running out of authorization. Y'all aren't the only ones. 67 actually, if they issue the full amount of this bond issue, they don't have enough ad valorem authorization. Their bond issue, if they were doing it all, and how we presented it to the Water Development Board to show feasibility, is that they would be doing two bond issues. One, using up all the remaining ad valorem bond authorization, voter authorization, and then the rest of it would have to be a water and sewer revenue bond, which doesn't require voter authorization. So, they are sensitive to using up all their authorization if they, potentially can avoid it. But there are a number of districts that are getting to the back end of their voted authorization and are going to have to be looking at, to the extent they need to access the bond markets in the future, and a bond election isn't feasible, of issuing water and sewer revenue debt and having to adjust the water and sewer rates accordingly to be able to finance that debt service, which, the River Authority already does that for all of its bonds. It would be something that the MUDs would have to do, and 47 will have to do. If y'all need to issue debt in the future and you don't want to have another bond election. So it's something that is certainly an issue, and you're exactly right. It does have to be thought about as an alternative to increasing your M&O rate, especially if you're determined to be a developed district and you have a 3.5% limit and an automatic rollback election if you're over that.
So, just so everyone knows, what I see on our financial statements is, in our capital projects fund, we have almost 6.5 million. So this is a big chunk that would be coming out of that, that may or may not directly impact those that are in. It will impact the people in our bonds, but max effectiveness, I'm not 100% sure on. And I just want to understand, the project is really just to deepen the reservoir basing over there on, where the floodplain already exists. Is that correct?
Let me pull up another screen share.
That's, the reason why I asked the question is a little bit based off of Mark Unland's things of what this project is, right? If we're just digging a hole and making sure the sides don't fall in, maybe the engineering doesn't need to be that sophisticated on it.
Well, I take off on that too. The cost of $40,000 per home, and it has been phenomenal since this is coming out more in the news, this Bear Branch Drainage Improvement Project. I haven't had one comment to promote it or in favor of it. And the comments that I have heard have given me pause on this project. 10 minutes before the meeting tonight, a resident by the name of Peter Bartok, who I met in a One Water meeting, asked about this and had alternate suggestions, and was concerned about the cost. And so for my part, when I said something positive last month, I do want you to know that I am taking pause with this project, and I was hopeful that the township would take the decision away from me, because I'd like to see them deliberate on this, because I'm not an engineer. I've been in the One Water meetings, and I understand that those homes in MUD 67 are repetitive loss homes, but there are 5 of them. And if we bought all of them out, you wouldn't reach 3 million, and we're looking at 14 million. So it's a big project. And another thing that I see going into the future as this project unfolds is we're going to be thinning out that Bear Branch drainage ditch, and the homes along there typically when you send bulldozers or whatever it takes to get back there, people are going to be, what are you doing? I have not heard of this project. I don't want the trees thinned out, and there will be lots of people wondering why we're doing this. I would like to see this presented more in the public domain. I would love to see it brought up at a township meeting where their meetings are more publicized, and the residents that are along these areas that Jim's showing will see what we're contemplating and hear more from the public. Thanks.
Jim,
And this, the screen, I've got the plan is to kind of redefine the pilot channel with some minor excavation and doing some side slopes. The end result would be more of a pedestrian or user-friendly area along here and along here. You've seen my marker. The detention ponds here and here. We've entered into discussions with Lone Star. A portion of the flood easement here is Lone Star College. And I think the desire is to make those more of an amenity, community amenity than just a detention.
Okay.
So anyway, and the public outreach is to be done with the neighborhood meetings. The plan is to hold at least 3 or 4 different neighborhood meetings to explain what the proposed project is. But again, the challenge is the time frame.
From my perspective, I think we've not capitalized on the fact that what is a lot of this area that is victimized by flooding, and it is in the graben created between the Panther Branch and Jones fault lines. And that area continues to sink at a faster clip than the areas on either side of it. So it's a shame, as if we contemplate doing this project for $14 million, we continue, all of us in the woodlands and NOAC included, to repair and patch where fault lines have occurred, where subsidence is happening, and do it quietly. And I think we need to itemize the expenses of aggressive groundwater pumping and be open about it.
Okay, so Jim, I think we'll all feel more comfortable once we have more information. Now, Mark Vondro and we actually had a conversation about this, that maybe there was going to be a meeting where we could flesh out some of these details with all the MUDs and what the project is and how, the benefit for each MUD was determined. Is that still in the works? I've been out of pocket for the past couple of weeks, so I'm not sure what's going on with that.
We're certainly available and happy to do that, but I haven't had that discussion with anyone.
Okay, and what's the deadline in getting this approved before the project dies?
We've requested an extension to the Texas Water Development Board a week and a half ago, I think. We haven't heard back. We're pushing them for a response. So if we don't get the extension, probably won't get done. If it does, we'll have to work up a schedule, kind of how it would play out. And I don't have that tonight.
Okay. Well, so consider our act. Do I hear a motion to, what act do you want? You want us to approve this tonight?
I would like for you to approve the scenario that was presented, with the understanding if we bring in additional partners to reduce or to participate in the cost, that your share would go down.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
And this is Brian. So just before y'all consider the motion on that, just to clarify, it would also be to authorize preparation of an interlocal agreement regarding the arrangement. And so this is not your last bite at the apple. It just starts to get the machinery in process, because we are going to be pretty tight. Even if we get that extension, the process to go through and get those bonds issued through the Water Development Board and funded does take a few months to get done. And so we're probably, golly, maybe 2 or 3 months, maybe, with the extension. And we got to get the interlocal agreement in place, run to ground if the township's actually going to pitch in or not, and get it lined up. So
I mean, I think we can approve in theory and in concept. We want to improve the drainage within our district, right? But I think that I'm getting the feeling, you can all correct me, but I'm getting the feeling that none of us are really very comfortable with what we've been presented so far. So I think that we want to pursue this, but we want these details. So, you know, we're not entering into an agreement yet, right? But we definitely, I think that the board supports the idea of improving the drainage. That's what we issued this bond for. But we want to know what we're paying for, right? We want to know what we're getting. And I don't feel like we have a clear understanding of that yet.
Right, I agree with you, and I couldn't approve any kind of agreement that this is the project we're gonna move forward with, while I do want to improve drainage. So that's where I am too.
And I guess that's the question, Brian, is are we approving starting the negotiation for what a project could look like and what we are willing to pay for? Or are we approving, oh, sure, we'll spend $2 million? Because I don't think any of us are necessarily at the, yes, we're totally on board with spending the money, even if we agree that we should participate in the situation.
This is Brian. So I think what Jim was looking for at this point is if districts are willing to participate up to that dollar amount on a cash payment basis, and to prepare an interlocal agreement that would address that arrangement that would come back to the boards to get a sense of what districts are willing to financially participate on that basis. I think we could certainly, Jim, have LJA, since they've been the ones who've worked on the grant and loan application with the Water Development Board, have them attend this meeting and give a presentation on what the proposed project is, and answer questions for the board. Do you think that would be helpful, Jim?
Yes, I think that we certainly would be happy to do that. Yes.
Okay, so consider an act on potential funding partnership with MUD 67. So, I just can't help but to think back to some of our non-paying groundwater fee cities that making this a motion improvement. What are we committing to, right? The details aren't quite there, but we'll make the motion. Will someone make a motion to consider and act on the funding partnership with MUD 67 on the Bear Branch, Panther Creek, Research Forest Drive drainage improvement concept?
Well, I'll certainly make that motion.
Okay.
I don't like concepts, quite frankly. Here's my problem is this has all been done seemingly out of the light and out of participation by our mud. We're putting up, you know, we're being asked to put up 2.7, and it doesn't seem like to me. I was ready to vote for this, and I was in favor of it, and it doesn't seem to me like you guys have your act together. Okay, whoever those guys are. Okay, and you know, what I would normally expect to see is to see a statement of exactly what's going to happen, when this is going to happen, if it's going to happen over 12 months, starting sometime 6 months from now, 12 months, I don't even know when that's going to happen. And I would normally, in a financial environment, want to see those pro formas, you know, and what's the impact to our mud? What's the impact? You know, what are the potential problems that we might have out there that we need to fund in the future in our own mud? Okay, you know, we're not. This, I hate to say it, but the information is just not there at the level that I would normally expect.
You make it very hard to make a second to that, but you make
Right.
points. It's my point, you know. So, not a second, by the way.
Well, like I said, you know, somebody needs to be the fatted pig here, so I'll make the motion, but, you know, feel free.
Do I hear a second? I mean,
Hey, man, it's tough. I want to support this, right? Like, I think that it's something that we need. I just need more information on how this is the choice.
I'll make a second, but you know, we really need to flesh out these details so that we can more formalize this with the interlocal agreement to make sure that 27% of this funding cost is the right percentage, and that we're getting value for our taxpayers in the district. So we still need to get that done, but I'll make the motion or the second, I guess, to keep the project alive and to flesh out the details so that we can make it happen if it makes sense. So that's a motion and a second. We'll see how, Paul? How do you vote?
Aye.
Laura?
No.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Cynthia?
I'd like to abstain.
Okay. I'll vote aye. So that's a 3-1-1. The motion will carry on that.
And this is Brian. I assume y'all do want LJA to attend next month to go over those details with you. I'm sure you do, but we'll just have that in the record that you are requesting LJA to attend to make a presentation.
Yes, please.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we're probably not the only one that wants to see this.
And I would, any specific details, I think we've got to capture the video tonight, but anything that you think of that you would like to be presented, please let me know, and we'll try to make sure we have that.
Well, I think one of the places we should start is, how about a timeline? Okay.
Understood. No, that's provided.
With major milestones, okay, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a great place to start. And then, you know, flesh out the details of this thing for each mud. I mean, I would expect that each mud is going to have similar questions to the ones we have.
And I'm not an engineer, financial background, but I respect what, you know, like I mentioned, this Peter Bartok and Mark Unland, the questions they've had about the hydrology report that's behind it. I'd like to get the answers to all of those kinds of questions. So, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Laura. I'd like to understand, you know, why the scope of work that was chosen was the one that was chosen, and, you know, what are the alternatives? What happens if we don't do anything? What other things might have been considered, so that we really understand why this particular approach was the choice. Because
I'll
I'm a
just go on.
hydrologist, if not a financial person.
Good. I'm glad to have you guys on the board.
And I'll go on record to say I understand that this is kind of pushed through to take advantage of the special grant program, the 0% interest. So I understand why it's just kind of messy. But we'll go ahead.
I hope that we can get it right. I think we can, and that we can take another stab at it. And I'll help the campaign with TWDB when we present with them again to try to get another grant, because that's easy to do. I can do.
Yeah, we don't want to leave a sour taste in our mouth when we go ask for more money down the road.
Right.
Okay, so we'll move on to item number 18, receive the general manager's report.
A few items to highlight from our trustee meeting. And I also want to report that we did have a meeting with the Eagle Mead residents. If you remember last month, we presented a draft response to a host of questions and concerns that homeowners group had. We had a very lengthy, detailed meeting with them, and I think they, if I remember correctly, they wanted us to report that they were very satisfied with all the answers and the responses that we've given them, and so we're in a good place with that group today. Laura, you attended that meeting.
They were extremely grateful. They kept saying, do we need to come to the meeting and tell them thank you to this MUD 47 board? They're very grateful for what Jim and Donnie were able to accomplish. And it absolutely, they said it many, many times. They're very grateful, and I appreciate it too. Thanks for, it was MUD 47 board supporting that we look into this a little further, and I think they can all rest easier now over in the Eagle Mead neighborhood. Thanks.
And the only thing kind of left hanging with that is the finalizing the memorandum of understanding with Del Webb. And I understand that it is being reviewed by their homeowners association board. So we hope to get those details worked out in the next month or so. We did have a request for the MUDs to look into doing a funding assistance for low income or home or residents that were struggling to pay their water bill. I had a request from a MUD 46 board member to look into that. We opened the discussion at the trustee meeting, and the examples we gave were City of Houston has a very aggressive program for residents and customers to donate money to go into a fund. City of Huntsville has an aggressive program, and we asked Brian his opinion on this, and he was very firm that cities have this power, but MUDs, it would be very difficult for MUDs to create that sort of program. So it's been put on pause right now unless he can find more wiggle room to support that. I also had a request from a MUD 46 resident for me to look over the Ian McCard reports that were done back in the 70s at the request of George Mitchell prior to the development of the woodlands. And I did look at those, and I actually found that they were very timely and had very good information in them, in particular relating to groundwater availability and drainage. So I think Shelley sent a link to those documents. They're rather lengthy, but it's kind of timely. So if you get a chance, go through those documents and take a look. I did report that we've invoiced 5 of the prime contractors that work for TACUS. One of those prime contractors kind of cut off communication with us and TACUS, and showing good faith, TACUS actually paid that damage invoice for that contractor to the tune of $35,000. We're still working with 4 other invoices, and TACUS is applying some pressure to their primes to work this out. So we'll see how that develops over the next week or so. I reported that HARC has completed their analysis of where subsidence monitoring stations should go in Montgomery County. That's available on our website and their website. Now, that document will be used as we talk about subsidence monitoring account across the county going forward. We talked about pole relocations for the AMI at 2 two neighborhoods, Splash Pine neighborhood and the neighborhood up by HEB at Woodlands Parkway in Kirkendall. During that presentation, I reported that our legal counsel suggested that it was if that pole was to be relocated, it was the cost of the mud district where the pole sits. After some discussion at the trustee level, they instructed me to come back with a funding scenario that what if that were shared by all the MUDs, what would that look like? So we'll be doing that next month. We did meet with Kevin Brady's district director regarding being put in the best position to take advantage of funding from the American Jobs Plan. He was very helpful, very receptive, has notified his Washington, D.C. office about our desire to be put in a good position to take advantage of that. We're going to have a follow-up meeting with Congressman Brady in early August. And we've also developed our short list for consultants and lobbyists to help work on that. So that's the update on that. And that concludes my report.
Anyone, any questions, comments? No? All right. Thank you, Jim. Fantastic. We'll move on to item number 19, receive the trustees, Woodland Water Trustees report.
I wasn't able to attend the trustee board meeting because I had a horrendous case of the cooties. And so then I called Paul and I called Anthony, and you guys are lucky you were out traveling, but unfortunately we didn't have someone there. Fortunately, the meeting was recorded, and I hope you're all in receipt of an email that includes the recording at the bottom of it. It was a couple of hours, and there was a very interesting part. The very beginning was a 26-minute discussion of my ethics, mostly about me. It was awful in that I think that I'm very ethical and that I've said everything that I've said was the truth. And furthermore, that when I spoke the truth, I said that they were my views. And I had proof of all of that, you know, my email to the media, and I think I covered all my bases on that. But since I am your representative, I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to ask me any questions about that part of the trustee board meeting, if you'd like.
Well, Laura, I will say I was concerned when I started reading this that you're the number one item, you know, number one topic of discussion. But as I worked through my packet and I saw the article, I wasn't as concerned.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was approached by an organization today. They wanted to do a water panel, and they were looking for someone to give the point of view of residents in the Woodlands. And I said, I better not. I'm being reviewed by the trustee board. You know, they don't want me to speak. So go to Eric Hurd, the president of the trustee board. It would be more appropriate for him to be the spokesperson and to offer news. You know, people do want quotes, and I'm asked for them frequently, and I've been freely giving them, but I will, you know, until further notice, you know, I'll step back. I've changed my email to say that all the views in my email are those of mine personally, and not on any of the boards that I serve on. So
I guess I have a comment. I did not see, I didn't see the meeting. I didn't attend the meeting, but I did read the article. I just have a view that says, you know, as it relates to the city and its acquisition of the MUDs, I think as MUD directors, frankly, if we've got an opinion and we want to express it, you have the right to do it, but we all need to make sure, I think, that it's clear that it's our opinion, okay? And that, you know, we don't speak for a MUD or the MUDs. I just, you know, including myself, I just think that, you know, that's a critical factor. I also think that anything that gets said needs to be more than just generalizations. I mean, one individual who is a MUD director made a comment, if I recall the article, about, you know, the positivity of doing away with board directors. And so when I read that, I said, well, you know, at the end of the day, in order to see that positively, one would have to think that there is no reason to have MUD directors doing the things and considering the things we do, because ultimately whoever owns this water department is going to have people to give the consideration to those issues and do the job. Okay. And that means that nothing goes away. You're still going to pay. You're not going to buy a body for less than $1.75 to do that kind of a job with that kind of a substantive background. And so I just think that, you know, we just we owe it to our residents, I think, to be as circumspect as we can and give them as much you know, as much clarity as possible, not broad generalizations about anything.
Well, thank you. I definitely will in the future do more than what I had done, which was to say that they were my views. I will say that, and I'll say it a couple more times to the media to make sure that that is conveyed in the article. But my point was that there are 55 of us. If you look at the Woodlands as a whole, 55 decision makers, and it's like herding cats. And I mean that in a loving way. So that's it. Thank you. As far as the rest of the trustee report, I think it was well done, and I didn't have any other comments, but I did listen to the meeting in its entirety, and it was a good discussion over the Trinity River project, I thought, as well, but we covered it this evening in the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. We'll move on to number 20. Are there any matters for placement on future agenda? Okay. Here are none. It's time for adjournment. So can we
I'll move, we adjourn.
move? All right.
Thanks, guys.
Here a second.
Good night. Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
Did we vote on this?
No, we don't need.
Okay.
We all agree, I think.
I was
mean,
like,
do you wanna
yeah,
stay longer,
okay.
Cynthia, because you know we can hang out if that's what you're looking forward to.
Oh, I'm good. Thanks, Jen.
Right. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.